All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to my informative speech. Today, we'll be looking at the historicity of the Bible, and that is actually the name of my talk. It's the biblical historicity where faith meets fact. So there appears to be a hole in the human spirit that only the divine can fill. And essentially, this metaphysical pull has led me to investigate religions and take a look at my own religion that I was raised with, which is Christianity. So once we dive into the Bible and scripture, we see that it's not exactly a collection of stories and sort of like metaphysical speculation. It's really based in reality with real people. These events really happened. And today we're going to be looking at why we can reliably say that. So the first way we're going to look at the Bible is through archaeology. Archaeology obviously is the most tangible way we can provide evidence for something from the past. So the first slide you see here is the Tel Dan stele, meaning the house of David. Stele is just means a fragment of stone. So this was found in 1933, and the inscription here you can see is highlighted. It says House of David. This is the first extra biblical resource we have that proves that the King of David was in fact a historical figure, and did do what he did and what existed when he said he existed. Moving on, the Pool of Bethesda. Anybody familiar with Scripture will recognize this. This is a location where Jesus actually performed one of his miracles by healing one of the lame men next to the pool. This was excavated, and in the book Jesus and Archaeology, he talks about how they know that this is the Pool of Bethesda because it is locationally where it is at, but also in the Bible, it talks about very specific dimensions and the dimensions and the features of the pool, which were very, very specific. The Pool of Bethesda has been found, and just another piece of history that we can actually touch and visit and stand on. Moving away from archaeology, we're going to get into the another reason why I think Christianity holds so much fact is that the amount of manuscripts that we own. The Dead Sea Scrolls were found and in the Nag Hammadi library, and every single book of the Old Testament in some fraction or another. As you can see here, they're very old, so they're destroyed to some degree, but every single book in the Old Testament, except for one, which is the book of Esther, is recorded here in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And so they date from carbon dating, they date all the way back from 250 BC all the way to 68 AD. And the continuity between the message and the teachings and the language stays the same throughout that very long period of time. So there's no perversion of the gospel message. The Dead Sea Scrolls are a big proof of that. Moving on, we have Ryland's Papyrus. This is the oldest version of the New Testament that we have. And it's dated, some people say, as you can see in the picture, some people say the early first half of the first century, some people say the turn of the second century, but this is essentially from the Gospel of John, and you can read here the translations. But the importance with this papyrus piece is that it is within 100 years of the death of Jesus Christ. So, for example, if we take a look at something like Caesar's works, his Galactic or Gaelic Wars, that was written And then the first copy that we have a piece of was that is dated back to 1,000 years after his death. And there's only 10 manuscripts that support his original work. And yet here we have the New Testament with the fragments you have of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Greek manuscripts. We have over 26,000 manuscripts supporting the New Testament alone. So the Bible is far and away the only historical document with such a breadth of support behind it. And last topic we're going to touch on before we move on is just some verification. We're going to step outside the Christian ethos and look at people who were either agnostic or Jewish or Roman who also spoke about the Christian time period. So the first is Josephus, who is a very famous Jewish historian. He wrote in his works, The Antiquities of the Jews. He talks about Jesus. He calls him a wise man. He says that he's a doer of great deeds or wondrous deeds. And there's also a line in here that you can see that is debated about, but it says, about this time there lived a man, Jesus, a wise man, if indeed one ought to call him a man. That line specifically has been debated upon, but again, it just further speaks about the divinity of Christ as a historical figure, not as some metaphorical person. Moving on, we have a Roman historian by the name of Tacitus, who wrote in his works about the crucifixion specifically of Jesus, and also the persecution of the Christian church after Jesus' death by Nero. And lastly, the last piece we're going to touch on is a Roman governor by the name of Pliny the Younger. There was a Pliny the Older, obviously. And he wrote in his communications back and forth between Roman government officials about the Christians' refusal to denounce Jesus Christ, even at the point of being pressured with physical harm and death. And he talks about their resolve to stick with and their belief in the Christian story. So we've looked at archaeological findings, we've looked at manuscript continuity and integrity over the years, and lastly, we've looked at some secular individuals who also corroborate the historical narrative of the Bible. So that will bring us to the end. And as we close this talk, I would just like to say that staying inquisitive and being skeptical is good when we're talking about something that is so important, like your faith or your health or something like politics. We need to be skeptical, but when we're presented with evidence that is paradigm changing, we need to be able to accept that and adjust our point of view moving forward. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here.